Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Well, good morning, or should I say good afternoon, being that we're 2 minutes past 12. I wanted to talk to you about my novel that I wrote. I read some interesting literature about what people like to read, some action, the mafia type books and things like that. It can be very exciting. The book that I wrote is called Quinn's Dilemma. And just to let you know, it can be bought on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and through the publisher Reader's Magnet. On the cover, it says something that is very true. Trapped between the Justice Department, the mob, and a notorious union brings intrigue, violence, and murder. I suppose that would be okay to read, except for the fact that I lived it. This book, Quinn's Dilemma, I wind up as Parker Quinn, and it is more of a diary. I don't consider myself talented enough to write something imaginary. Certainly not when you have been in the middle of the mob, the union, murderers. There's a phrase in here, may you wish for a good life. Yes, of course. And may you live an interesting life. Well, that has some meaning to it for my respect, because my interesting life was caught between the mafia, the mafia's hitman, the federal government prosecutors, and everything else. And it was real. So when you read this book, you're seeing something that actually happened. I would say that 90 to 95% of the book is exactly what happened. The other 5% is just to connect the pieces. Quinn's Dilemma starts out with me getting sick of working on Wall Street. And fortunately enough, I was invited by another brokerage firm to take over one of their losing branches. They were next to the last in the firm, and the firm was going to close the office, and all those people would be out of business if somebody didn't come in and turn it around. And they offered me the opportunity, and I did. And one of the ways that you can turn around a brokerage office is to, shall we say, invite brokers who are doing good business in other firms. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they're ready to jump at moving, but in my case, I was lucky. I wished for somebody to come over, and brother, did it give me an interesting life, because this person was tied to the union, and the head of the union, the broker was doing about $1 million worth of business a year, of which he had to give $250,000 to the head of the union. The federal government didn't think that was a very good idea. So they sent FBI agents, federal prosecutors out to trap the individuals who were participating in all of this. Thankfully, it was not me, other than the fact that the broker was working in my office. And when he brought in $1 million, the office went from next to last to about second in the firm, because along with him came some other brokers who were entirely different in the respect that they were not involved with the mafia and murderers and things like that. And the head of the union was a, shall I say, arrogant old man. And the prosecutors pursued charging him with accepting bribes and wound up convicting him. How long did he stay in prison? He didn't. He didn't go to prison. He got out of it the old-fashioned way. He died. And luckily enough, the person who took over his position was a good friend of mine. So at least I had some clearance, shall we say. Somebody's writing in a little. Hi, Bruce. I've loved your discussions about Quinn's dilemma. Well, thank you. The new head of the union was, as I said, a friend of mine, but he requested me to hire his wife. So rather than her having to sit at home, she would have something to do. And following that, I got a call from the mafia's hitman, who said, I want you to hire my wife. Well, let's see. The mob's hitman wants something, so maybe it might be a good idea. Thankfully, it turned out that they were both great ladies who did great work, and I was really glad to have them. But what it did was connect me to the mafia, the labor union, which was somewhat notorious, and at least certainly until my friend took over. And many different things happened. I used to have lunch with people in this group, the mob on one side of the table and myself and some union members on the other side. We have another book, we have another writing here. It says, your book is a wonder. Well, thank you. For one, live books, I couldn't read it. It just snapped off. And just to let you know, the print is rather small. for one, love books that have a bit of danger and action way in them. Oh, I assure you, this has a lot of waves of action. Interestingly enough, one day I was out having lunch. I know this was an every Saturday event. You didn't come by invitation. You came by, you better show up or else. So I would show up every Saturday for lunch. And one day, one of the mob's men asked me if I wanted to have some things. To be honest with you, I don't remember exactly what they were, but I said, how come? Where are you getting them? Oh, we're robbing a truck. We're going to have a full truckload of this. Why don't you take some? Gee, I don't know. I've got the FBI on one side, prosecutors, and you on the other side. So I respectfully declined. And speaking of the mafia, or I should say, speaking of the FBI, they're not the same by any means. I got invited to a motel to speak to a gentleman who turned out to be an FBI agent. And he said, and he didn't say, I'm reading something here. If you haven't experienced that moment, do you see yourself writing another story instead? No, as I said, this is not, I didn't have to think too much about it. All I had to do is remember and then put it in a form that was good to read. And what helped me with that was I took a class with James Patterson, who many people know as a very famous author, and writes books that people are very thankful to have. But I hired the wife of the hitman, hired the wife of one of the members of the union, and he was working in the office and producing that $1 million a year. Along with it comes some interesting things. Would you like to go for a ride here? How would you like to go out to Las Vegas? You have to bring $10,000 and we're going to have fun gambling and, shall I say, patronizing ladies. I respectfully declined because I didn't think it was a good idea to be seen in that crowd anywhere. I got called into the federal prosecutor in another city. He was of a higher rank than the prosecutor in the city that I was in. And I walked in there and he said the same thing as the FBI agent said when I walked into the motel. You're looking at 7 to 10 years for bribery. I said, I'm not bribing anybody. He said, well, we know what you're doing. You're issuing new issues. Now, what's the new issue? Companies build themselves up, they incorporate, and they have stock that is held within the house. The new issue is when they finally get to the point where a brokerage firm will offer that shares of that company out to the public. And the interesting thing about it is, a perfect example would be, it came out at $10 and closed the day at 30. Needless to say, tripling your money in one day is something that you want to give to your best clients and they were accusing me of giving them to the wives of the members of the mob. And I told them, well, what you is that each one of these books has a code in it that says they can't have it. So I'm glad to meet you today. Goodbye. And I got up and I walked out. This was a type of activity that happened fairly regularly. He was the only one that was totally mistaken, well, except for the other ones who were saying I was bribing people. But there were, I would know about hits going on and things that the mob was doing. And I knew some of the people in the mob, and managed to keep a respectful distance and be polite. And someone is asking, how does the mafia treat women? I would say they treat them fine until the woman just doesn't do what the person wants, and then it's a matter of go away, or you'll have a bad accident. I unfortunately, and I'm embarrassed to say that I met a very lovely, lovely woman in all of this activity. I was married, and I couldn't help myself. I actually fell in love with her. And I very disrespectfully, I would call it, divorced my wife. And the mob came to me and said, look, you're going to have to pay alimony for a wife and 2 children. They said, for $5,000, we'll kill the mother. I thought about it, and no, I'd rather pay $25,000 a year than $5,000 one time in order to maintain my dignity, if you would. Not to mention the fact that stealing the mother of your 2 children out from under them is not exactly what you call a very nice, reputable thing. This book goes through all kinds of activities. From, as I said, gee, we got a truckload of stuff we're going to steal. Do you want some? People who were winding up dead because they didn't do what they were told. And this book sequences most of that and leads you to wondering, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to this guy? Is he going to get killed too? There's a lot of activity in the book. It'll keep you going for quite some time. I've had a number of people say that they sat down and wanted to read the book and started reading it and couldn't put it down, which I think is a very wonderful thing to say. One person actually said, I started in the morning and I finished at about 10 o'clock at night. The book, I didn't have to make things up in this book. When you live a life that's interesting, as we call it, the Chinese curse says, may you live an interesting life. When you live an interesting life, your days are taken care of, things are full, and the only thing you have to do is watch out what you're doing and don't make any stupid mistakes by offering somebody $200 so they can be reelected. Or how about sitting at the table at lunch every Saturday. And when the people in the mob didn't want me to know what they were going to do or talk about or whatever, they would speak in Italian. The interesting thing was I took 2 years of Italian in college and could tell what they were talking about. Crazy me decided one day that I would respond to them in Italian. And you should have seen the look in their eyes. They just looked at each other. And I thought, how stupid could you be? I told the head of the mob at that time, I really honestly don't know what you're doing. Nobody could ask me, did he do this? Did he do that? We've got somebody else in here saying something. Somebody commented, I know this book is based off your experience. You have to forgive me, this print is exceedingly small. From years ago. How has your narrative captured the something you felt there? I think it captures it perfectly. Granted, it was a while ago that all of this happened, but I lived through it, and I didn't have to make up the fact that if I did something stupid, I'd be floating in a river. And I certainly didn't want to be one of the people that was taking stolen property. So you try to, the best you can, to live a sincere, honest life in the midst of chaos, mayhem, and murder. It's not that easy, but I managed. I'm still here. And I think you're going to find that this, having dealt with the mob and everything else, you can be very realistic when you're writing about what they've done, what they did, what the federal prosecutors did. As I said, got invited to a motel room by a gentleman, and there was another man there, and he said, not hello, how are you? And he said, nothing like that. He said, you're doing 7 to 10 years. And that was the first time I heard it. And of course, the second time was the senior prosecutor, and he was in another city, that said, that was the first words out of his mouth. You're doing 7 to 10 years. I gather that normally people who are doing wrong things get shaken, but when you can explain it away so that he can understand, and he just shook his head, and I just stood up and left. I think you'll find, interestingly enough, things that happen in here that you wonder, what's going to happen to him? Why would he do that? And again, I'm just going to show you the book. Somebody else sent me a nice message. But Quinn's Dilemma has gotten a 5-star rating on Amazon, which is a good thing. You can buy it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and of course the publisher, Reader's Magnet. And speaking of Reader's Magnet, here's someone saying, I know this book is based off your experience from years ago. How has your narrative captured the emotion you felt then? I would simply answer that by saying, when somebody says they're going to kill you if you do anything wrong, when you know that other people have gotten murdered, you don't have to have a great memory to, I mean, that just sticks in your mind. So it was just a matter of sitting and remembering and writing. And that's what this is about. This is, in fact, a true story, except for the fact the names have changed, not so much to protect the innocent, but to protect me. The last thing I wanted to do was write a book with the names of the mob and prosecutors and FBI agents in it. So I made them all up. But still, the activities that happened were real. I didn't have to make up any activities that were not real. And someone is asking, "Hi, Bruce, hope you have seen an actual fight between the FBI and the mafia." You know, that's interesting. You hope I've seen this fight between them. In some respects, I could say I did. I, of course, was not attached to the mafia, although I did eat lunch with them every Saturday. And I was not attached to the federal prosecutor or the FBI. That was just something that, not that I wouldn't do it, but you have to get trained for it and all that sort of stuff. So I found my place to be quite interesting, shall we say, being in the middle of the war between the government, the prosecutors, the FBI, the mafia, the union, and trying to keep track of everything that's going on so you can do the right things, such as hire the wife of the mob hitman and then keep yourself from getting attacked or thrown into prison. I have another comment. Hi, Bruce. Oh, there it goes. Oh, here it is again. Thank you. How long did it take you to finish the book? Did you have moments where you were dissatisfied in how you worded and what happened? And the answer is, of course. You want to explain things in the best way possible and using the right words that would give the book the action, the thrill of the moment of reading, without having to make anything up. So it really wasn't all that hard. I would say I admire authors who make up stories and then, then they have to think of what they're going to say and so on and so forth. Thankfully, I had a decent memory and was able to come up with all of this because it actually happened. And I think that if you read it, you'll wonder how in heaven's name did this guy let himself get sucked into such a situation? The answer is simple. I was in charge of a branch office of a brokerage firm that was going to close. And if I didn't do something, I probably wouldn't have had a job that long. So be careful what you wish for. I wish that the office would be turned around and become one of the better offices in the firm. And it did. The only thing I had to do was keep up with the mafia, the union, hitmen, and so on and so forth. Another comment. What part of the story did you enjoy writing the most? Any scene you enjoy looking back upon? Absolutely. I look back upon meeting my wife for my second wife, who unfortunately died in December of 20 after we were together for 33 years. So needless to say, something good came out of this for me. And I managed to stay alive and comply. Well, not say comply, let's just say maneuver around so that I didn't get thrown in jail for 7 to 10 years. And that's the point of the book. How do you, what does the mafia do? How do you deal with them and not get hurt? And I think you'll find it a very interesting, somewhat tense book. Heaven knows when I was writing it, I felt a lot of the things all over again. And I would say that I read the book a couple of times just to be sure that it was good. And I found it to be exceptionally good. So I will have to end at this point. Wish you all the very best and advise you don't get caught between the mob, the unions, and all these other people who would more than happy to kill you. And the one perfect example of that is, as I was riding in the car with the mob, with the hitman for the mob, he was taking me someplace that I couldn't remember where. And there was a little bat, I mean, it was like 2.5 feet long in the back. And I asked him, what's that bat for? And he says, I'll tell you what, why don't I stop the blank car and I'll show you. Well, I can tell you honestly, I have no more dents in my head. Didn't get any dents in my head because I told him, I appreciate what you're saying, but I think I get the picture of it now. So let's just keep going. And we did. And I lived. And those are the types of situations that are in this book. And I hope that you get to read it, because I think you'll find it anything but dull. I wish you all the best today and tomorrow, and hope that you have the opportunity to read this book. As I said, you can get it from Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or the printer Reader's Magnet. And I wish you the best afternoon possible. Thank you for listening.